So I've had a problem for weeks now. Writing paralysis. And it's really sad because I love to write. I love playing role-playing games, and I love writing adventures and telling you about all of these great role-playing games that I also love. And it's a little funny too, considering the topic I'm going to talk about today. You see, last month I ran an adventure jam. It's a 48-hour writing competition where you write an adventure and other people play it. And it was such an amazing competition. And I got stuck trying to write this video because there were so many people, so many great people involved with it, and I wanted to do all of them justice. And in hesitating, in double thinking myself, I did them an injustice by not producing anything. Well, I'm trying to do that right now. So I hope you'll have patience with me. I hope you'll forgive me. And I'm gonna try to give you a rundown of what the Adventure Jam was. My name's Corey, and this is the Dead Unicorn, the tabletop role-playing game club. Hope that wasn't too dramatic, but what I said was real, and what I was feeling is real. Writing is a passion of mine. I hope you can tell, as you do quite a bit of it as a narrator or a game master. At least I do. But I also like running adventure modules. Lots of time and effort goes into the creativity, story, lore, rules of adventure modules. Sharing the adventures you create can be worthwhile. Writing adventure modules for other people. But it also takes a narrator out of their comfort zone. I love when writing can be challenging, even though it can be hard to meet that challenge head on, as I can definitely tell you from these past weeks. That's why I created the Adventure Jam. 48 hours to write a 4-hour adventure for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition that's SRD compatible. The top 2 adventures were run right here on this channel. We had a blast playing them. We had the same narrator and the same characters for each of the adventures. The narrator could only use the SRD and the adventure as written, with any handouts and maps created to run the adventure with no coaching from the writer. At the end, the narrator picks their favorite adventure, the players as a whole pick their favorite adventure, and the fans pick their favorite via the community poll on YouTube. I'm going to reveal the results at the end of this video, but first, let's see what everybody thought of the adventure, starting with our first contender. Never Say Die by Tristan Penn is a story of a boy and his father. The PCs are given a task to take a noble boy and escort him to a finishing school, but something has gone terribly wrong, as the boy has gone missing and the town that the boy lives in is caught in a time loop, and only the PCs seem to notice. It's a tale of a father who sees his son's best friend as a bad influence and a boy who doesn't want to grow up. So much so that they create a time loop to stay young and with his best friend forever.
Hi, my name's Tristan Penn, and I wrote Never Say Goodbye. I've always found it interesting how honest and sincere are, especially between men or masculine presenting people who are growing up. It can be really easy to have a very strong bond, but then the conventions of the older men in their lives kind of force them to sometimes break apart before they really wanted to. And I sort of just wanted to highlight the cyclical nature of that, both literally with the time loops and also with how it's represented generationally in the story.
What kind of challenges did you have writing this adventure?
Well, other than the obvious 48-hour challenge, I found it very hard to translate the way that I play a game into a very concise format that someone else would be able to pick up and use. It's a really novel idea for me.
How did you feel the game master did with your material?
I felt like they did the best they could with what I gave them. Um, I was very, very happy with like how much they fleshed out because he didn't have to put on different voices for the villagers and the guards. I really appreciated that he saw that I was trying to fill out that space and he went with it. Um, there were certainly moments when, and I believe this is because I failed to make it easily accessible in how I wrote it. There were some key switch points that I think might have made the experience better for everyone. But ultimately, I was really happy with how it was handled.
If there was something you could change, or if you had more time, you could do more of, what is it that you think you could do for the adventure?
If I wasn't fixing sort of the balances and getting it more fine tuned to a four person party of level 6 players, I would say it was my formatting. I think I gave a lot of answers to the questions that the players were asking the DM, but they were having to scroll through these very lengthy descriptions of these sections, and I didn't have the time to format it so that it was much clearer what information would be learned in a following time loop or how this NPC might react to them, or just all of those reference things I felt kind of got lost. And so they had to think on their feet like DMs have to do.
So, what did our players have to say about the adventure?
I'm Sean, and I played Kaz for the Adventure Jam for both the adventures, and I had a fun time actually. I liked the goodbye. I like that it was well encapsulated from start to finish. There wasn't any real struggle to remember what it was that we were doing through this adventure. I thought that it was built out well, especially given the limited amount of time that the writers had to create these things. I was actually really impressed with both of them for doing this. But the thing with the Never Say Goodbye was it was just a little bit more composed. One of the things that really got me was, and I don't know if this will mark anything for you, it very much brought me to the memory of the movie Sphere. And I don't know if you've ever seen Sphere. It was the really weird underwater / time traveling spaceship thing. But of course, this ship that they find in the mountain, or of all places, within the stone, that somehow has this time travel ability, totally took me back to the movie Sphere. And I loved that because I actually liked the movie Sphere. It was weird. It was one of the very few movies that had Sharon Stone in it that I actually thought was, she did a really good job. And I'm not trying to batch on Sharon Stone. I think she can be a good actress. But that was, in my opinion, a very underrated horror movie. And in many ways, I think that people, if they had a chance to play this, would possibly think that, this is actually kind of an underrated adventure, because there are some subtleties to it that, unless you're really paying attention as a player, you're going to miss them. And I think the time loop worked really well to throw the confusion into the players. It bred that little bit of that, I guess, impatient frustration. We're back here again. But that's the whole joy of playing with time loops in a game, is that, you're going to end up getting shuffled around. And of course, as we kept trying to get so much closer to the end, you're out of time, and you're back at the start. Oh, And I love that. I think that that's a great mechanism to use against the characters.
What is your favorite part of Never Say Goodbye?
The whole zombie mecha battle droid thing at the end, and the fact that it was this whole time traveling past slash future self. I like that. I thought that that was really neat, and you could almost see it as in a visual scene where that would actually be the heartbreaking scene of the entire movie, right? Because it's wanting to keep his childhood friends together, kind of thing, or not have it happen the same way that it happened, and the inevitability of the fact that you are out of your time. What you're trying to do, you don't have the ability to do, and I love the fact that that was something that was actually included by the writer in the adventure.
Keith, you played in both of the adventures.
I did, yep.
What did you think of Never Say Goodbye?
I really liked that one. I admit I kind of wish that we could have had a little bit more time with it. We only gave ourselves 4 hours on each of them, which to really play it out a little bit more time, ironically, on that one, might have worked nicely. But I really enjoyed that one. I thought it was well written. I thought
well,
it was well run.
You didn't read it, right?
No, I didn't.
You played it. So
I played it. So
how it was presented, it seemed well written.
Okay, I can only judge based off of that. You're right, but how it was presented, it came off really really well. It was pretty smooth. The time constraints that our characters ran into with suddenly disappearing back to the beginning of entering town a couple of times there, just as we started to kind of get a handle on things at any given point. That was kind of appropriately frustrating.
What was your favorite moment during that adventure?
I think the visual of seeing the techno lich kind of floating down to kick all of our asses. That and don't get me wrong, he absolutely did. He was. I think up to that point, it was really good, but him as the final big boss was a little bit OP. I felt, because it was kind of like you've done all these things and you've run the gamut, you've solved the mystery, you've all the rest, and now the big bad guy is just gonna disintegrate y'all and be done with it.
Your reward is death.
yeah, exactly.
What did the narrator have to say about it? Okay, so that game is a trip. Never Say Goodbye. I gotta say the whole thing. I'm immediately going to another video game, Life is Strange, but also, of course, the movie Groundhog Day, because there's the whole time loops. Something else, though, when I read that the BBEG was a techno lich, I was like, I have to run this. I don't care how overpowered this final fight is. The idea of this gnome who's become a techno lich just to to create a time loop because he is sad about his past. I was like, this is like heartstring tugging and also awesomeness of techno lich. I really want to run it. The other thing is the heartstring thing is, this is something that I know I've talked with you about this in the past. I've always liked the idea that Dungeons and Dragons or any role-playing game could be used in a therapeutic way. And I've been involved in a lot of social career fields. I've worked in healthcare, and the idea of getting people that are having issues and getting them to kind of discuss it with you, and then creating games that remove them from the problem enough that they can look at it in a way that they're a little bit detached, and then process it that way. If they can't process it normally, I think that has a lot of value from a psychological standpoint. And that is something that I think that the author was trying to do. And that the whole point was these two children are split up, and they had a rich friendship, and it's not like a romance or anything like that. It's just honestly a friendship that was destroyed. But I really liked that idea, so that meant a lot to me. As for the game itself, as how it runs as a D&D game,
there was enough info for me to run the time loop, and I liked that. Something I would change is I would include a lot of specific box text for things that, because it said like conversations the NPCs were having. I would have specific box text written there so that they would always say the exact same word. So just in case you didn't realize it was a time loop when you were suddenly back at the entrance, I would have and you hear the woman say again, and then I would repeat the exact same thing. And, and then if you haven't caught on, you'll definitely catch on. And also, I think it's fun to do that. Just like the Ned Ryerson scene in Groundhog's Day, where he just constantly is encountering the same guy. I love that. He had 4 uncommon magic items that he just left up to the DM. Because your final fight was going to be so OP, I gave you 4 uncommon magic items that were the most creative, usable, rather than the most combat worthy. Because I figured you'd want to find a creative solution. It didn't go that way, but that was my thought. So I gave y'all the Helm's Telepathy, the Immovable Rod, the Ever Smoking Bottle, and the Eyes of Turning, because 2 of those are great for solving puzzles. The Immovable Rod and the Ever Smoking Bottle are great at just changing the environment around you. The Immovable Rod can stop someone in place or stop a door in place. The Ever Smoking Bottle can create a darkness that's better than magical darkness, because even true sight can't see through smoke, because smoke is physically there. And the Lich had true sight, because that's part of the Lich stat block. The main complaint I had on this game was honestly just that the Techno Lich was so overpowered. I ran him as non-strategically as I could, because I really do want y'all to win. And he still could have won if he just, gotten off a couple more spells. I did straight up execute one of y'all almost immediately. And you came back as a zombie and continued to attack the party, which was great. So the changes that were given for me for the Technolich was no legendary abilities and no layer abilities. I threw on top of that, because I figured it was rules as intended, no legendary resistances, which did help you all.
The Heartless Queen by Chad Mitchell takes place at a wedding where the bride makes a pact with the demon. The PCs must find her heart and stop the demon from marrying her instead of marrying her betrothed, who she wanted to marry. It had quite a cast of characters and strange magical items, and you'll never guess where the heart actually was, inside a flesh golem made to look like the bride.
I'm Chad Mitchell, and one of the entries for the Adventure Jam, and yes, the Heartless Queen. The knight met up with the devil, and there was a promise that he was going to, win his lady and marry her heart. But then she also stumbled across the same devil. After she was afflicted, in the little backstory, she was an alchemist. Actually, that explained the greenhouse in the tower. She had an incident, and he agreed to save her if he could have her heart for a moment to basically help heal the heart. So they both made a bargain. That was in the backstory that the GM was able to read and skim over.
Yeah, well, Howard really appreciated all of that backstory. He thought it was a pretty great backstory, actually. Why wasn't there notes around that the PCs could discover or anything? Did you ever think about anything like that?
Watching it, I was also working that weekend. I didn't have the full time to do it. So I literally read it the first time after it was already submitted. And probably one of my edits might have been actually who sent the letter. Maybe it would have been better if the butler sent the letter and described what unfolded. Yeah, I can't remember. It seemed to take a long time for everybody, the way it unfolded, to find out where the heart was. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, I time is precious to find time to play, and so just things. I know it was a quick build of a module, and everybody did great. Going through what was written down, but my idea was not for it to be hours of a treasure hunt and find the items. It was more of just they're there in every room. They're just things. Get your things. It was more like, yeah, could you show up with armor? Sure, but I was like, what if there's a character who showed up with fireballs and resistance to fire, all the fire stuff, and they're fighting demons, so it wouldn't work. So it was a way just to go around the house, and every time a snake was involved, the lady golem lady was actually supposed to go get the snake from you like it's a pet. And so there was supposed to be constant interaction with
Oh,
the flesh golem. It was supposed to be more RP heavy in that sense, instead of
interesting.
but then the movement around that tower with the mirrors and the elevators, as they call it, was just a ways to move around quickly, get away from her until people came up with a plan to deal with it.
Interesting.
And so it was kind of a way to help control the scene, with some motion there. But
So the next question I want to ask is, how do you think, and I think you kind of answered it a little bit, but how do you think the game master did with your material?
I think he did great. I thought everybody did a really good job. I know what was written. I read through it, and I was like, oh yeah. And, what was there was great. And I mean, one person mentioned like the layout definitely needs, tweaking of where you find things. But I did a great job with it. I think some of the stuff that was just not there was just not didn't have the right emphasis. Like the three NPCs there that were supposed to be helpful. I didn't say they're like not affected by the spell, which they weren't. It was actually this bee balm, which was an antidote for the branding rings, which were from the succubi, the three women.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah,
the
so it was on the
bees,
magic item list. So she had created the bee balm, which was it was a beehive in the greenhouse.
yes.
So the knight was, if you got close, he was covered in the brands, the burn marks. They were just burning her repeatedly to keep him contained. And so they
Interesting.
got burned, but she had the bee balm, and it was on the magic item list. And so they could have said anything. They were supposed to be like super, here's what you need to do. The main table coming in was full of healing potions, which were growlers. So if you drank them quickly, you healed, but you also were inebriated.
Oh, I
The
love that.
champagne, you would see the ethereal plane with the champagne. That's a little sip. You saw a little bit of it. If you drank all of it, you could potentially fight the demon or the devil with a little bit of alcohol on board. So the
So
things were supposed to be just there. It didn't come through that clearly.
Now, what did our players have to say about the adventure?
I liked the idea behind the Heartless Queen. It kind of gave me almost the gothic horror vibes. I found it a bit challenging though, and I think it's because of the way that it was. A lot of the adventure was stacked in that tower, and so you're going through the different levels. And I think there's an anticipation in a lot of players' minds that you're going to get to a level where this is going to end. And of course, the way that we were doing it was, we're going to go find the thing. We were very, very tunnel visioned on that. And so we ended up going to a lot of different floors. And there's the part of the voice in the back of my head that's saying, but we've already been here. Why are we here again? And of course, it's because we were so tunnel visioned on what the one thing we were looking for. Like, you had noticed that we completely ignored a character, an NPC that really, even though there was only one of us there, probably under other circumstances would have had more interest in. So, what you doing here in this strange room I got teleported into? A gothic homage that they were doing with the way that they had the heart has been stolen, and then this imagery of this woman whose heart you're trying to rescue, and she's, I don't want to, almost crucified or up for this sacrifice, heartless. But of course, you can only see her with the monocle. You can only see her through this magical glamour, and yet there's as we found out, the golem that's walking around with her actual heart in it. To me, that was something very, I want to say almost a bit Stalkerish, Lovecrafty-ish, Lovecrafting. I'm not sure how you do that. A bit of Bram Stoker, a bit of H.P. Lovecraft in that I really appreciated, because those are the things that kind of got me into the horror and gaming in the first place when I was a kid. So that one really struck a nice nostalgic chord with me.
So we're gonna go move on to the Heartless Queen.
That one felt a lot more awkward. It felt a lot more unfinished. Now I don't know if it was in the writing, or the organization of the writing, or which. But I mean, when we first arrived at the mansion that it was to be taking place in, was at first unclear whether we were there a couple of days ahead of when this wedding was supposed to be, or if the wedding itself was already supposed to be about to start or whatnot. So if we were there early, then it made sense that, most all we saw were a couple of the servants. But if we were supposed to be there just as things were beginning to be underway, then there needed to be a lot more NPCs running around in terms of other wedding guests, in terms of obstacles for us, really, realistically.
Do you feel like that this adventure would have been better as a much larger thing, or do you think that it would have just benefited from a bit of editing, that we could have pulled some stuff away and hit that 4-hour mark better?
I think a little bit of column A and a little column B. I'm not going to lie and say that none of it was our own, wasn't our own fault goofing around as players too. I mean, let's face it, the players can sometimes get off on some weird tangents and tracks and just go all over the place, and that can eat up a lot of time as well.
You can stare at a trap for hours.
There were a couple of neat little images that were presented when we first came across the three demonesses around the night there. That was a very interesting image. That was kind of a neat presentation that I kind of wish that we had followed up on at that time rather than just walking past it, looking for the next thing. Some of the descriptions, a lot of the other descriptions were really cool too. Like the music conservatory was well described, where we fought the snake creatures.
What did the narrator have to say about it?
I did my best to run it as written, but there were a lot of things that I noticed that I would change. I want to run everything as written because that's the point of the game, is how did you do writing this? So I didn't do what I wanted to do, which initially it's a wedding. I would have filled that tower with NPCs. They would have been friends of the bride, friends of the groom, people that didn't know anything was going on. I think that would have added another layer to the whole thing. Because they're royals, I would have had dignitaries over, which now gives a reason to not just openly walk around going, I know you people are devils, because some of them aren't. And if you start saying, hey, our kingdom's been taken over by devils, that can cause wars and all kinds of problems for everyone. So I would have changed the number of NPCs, and that would have given, I think, a whole new feel to it. I do like the overall story. The story was great. There is an interesting thing that I know about that my players don't. The first 3 pages of this module, of this one-shot, detail the whole conversations, how the devil tricks Dericus and how he tricks Finwelia into these devil deals. And there's a lot of dialogue, NPC box text, and there's no reason for any of that, because there's no way to reveal it to the players. It's like you just wrote me a short story. I'm like, man, if the players aren't there for any of this, you're killing yourself writing stuff you don't need to say.
But you got to get it out. Sometimes you just have to get that story out there that you have in your head. And I wouldn't mind reading that in an adventure, even though it doesn't come out to the players. It's just a cool thing for the person who is reading it to read.
That's what I'm saying. That is just for me, because there was no one around Dericus that shows up later that could have told you. I love the idea that there's this overlap of a hell realm with the real world. And the idea of, I had to change something and to let y'all just spat it through a mirror at one point, because y'all would not go talk to, and this is not on the writer, this is on my players. Y'all met Dericus and saw the 3 women around him, and you're like, let's avoid them. Then you saw the woman that was walking around acting weird like a child, and you avoided her. And you saw the guy in the greenhouse, he's a drunk, and you avoided him. And I'm like, what are they doing?
Both of these adventures were fantastic, but only one could win our first ever Adventure Jam. And that winner is...
it's Never Say Goodbye.
Never Say Goodbye. That one was definitely my favorite of the 2.
Most Thunder Run, I gotta give it to Never Say Goodbye. Time Loop and Techno Lich. were awesome.
Tristan Penn with Never Say Goodbye. So good. Thank you for writing that adventure. It was a pleasure to play it. Tristan, in the coming days, I'd like to help you format that adventure and get it ready for publish on DriveThruRPG so everyone can enjoy it. So keep your eyes peeled on the community page to see when it drops, or join us on Discord if you want to buy a copy of Never Say Goodbye. If you want to participate in our next Adventure Jam, because we're already talking about doing another one, subscribe to the channel. We will make an announcement about it closer to the time, or you can join our Discord and Patreon. Thank you so very much to our Patreon subscribers for keeping this channel ticking away. No matter if you're a player, a narrator, a writer, remember, have fun and go out and roll some dice.